We'll see what all of you feel about Florida State's recruiting class this time next week. For right now, we hope for the best. We talk speculation. We talk about the reality of guys on campus and visiting Florida State and making decisions. Talking Seminoles live right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Chris Frazier on the line. Spearatics right below me. We got, big game James Coleman possibly to step out there for a minute. Hopefully James coming right back. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, Mark. How about yourself?
I am doing just fine. And James and I were talking before we started to record about this possibly being the biggest weekend of Florida State's recruiting cycle with everybody that's expected to or possibly going to commit.
Yeah, we're going to start off on the 14th with Ty Hilton, which is someone I think Florida State's done a really, really good job with, especially experience and really what I want to say is I think Florida State does a better job than most any other universities explaining to these young men what they're going to be utilized as, what the vision actually is for them in the offense or defense or special teams. And then also obviously what the vision is for them moving forward in their career. And I think they do so well with it because if it wasn't, it was Ty Hilton that had made the statement that it was the biggest visionary conversation he has had as far as what he would be utilized to do. And that's why he was really intrigued about what Florida State was bringing to the table for him. So when you hear kids say certain things like that, when you get into depth, all the conversations that you hear with recruits are it was a fun visit. It was we did this and we did that. But most of the guys that Florida State ends up landing, there's a little bit more depth in that interview itself. Like they'll say stuff like, well, I really like what they're doing with the defense. I like the scheme that's set. I like what they would do with me if I was there. So there's been actual conversation of what you would be utilized to do. But then you move to Danzy. He's going to be committing on the 15th. You've got Danzy coming out of Florida High, and James knows obviously more about any of that than I do because that's his home. So James, if you want to talk about Danzy a little bit before I move on to the next guy, please do so.
Yeah, again, elite athlete, world. Actually, this isn't an exaggeration. He's actually got world-class speed as a 400-meter runner. I think actually who Florida State stands to lose this kid to more is USA Track and Field than any other school. He actually broke 46 seconds as a high school junior, which is pretty impressive. And I remember the track coach at Florida State, my friend Ricky, really likes him. And it's like, this kid's going to run 45, dang near 45 flat before the beginning of next season. And so he's a running back, but he's very long on the offensive side. But I think as we see right here, I don't know. I think Chris might have pointed out he's an athlete. He can play both sides of the ball. It matches up, and I think if he's playing that, it bodes well for us because he's a guy who can actually, even in college, putting on about 10 more pounds of muscle. It's probably going to be breaking 45 before we know it. But he loves football, so elite athlete, elite speed, great get. And as I always joke with people, there's been 3 former Florida State University Developmental Research School athletes that have gone on to Florida State. All 3 have gone to the NFL. That would be Martin Mayhew, Brandon Jenkins, James Coleman, and hopefully it'll be Micahi Danzy. Will fall into that fold.
Yeah, I had quite a few people because when I announced about Danzy potentially coming to Florida State, I'd announced him as the same position that you see up on the screen as the safety position because Pat Surtain really liked what Danzy brought to the table as far as his abilities. I mean, just the athleticism alone was catching eye, but then you get Dugans that sees him And then Yak sees him. Like, everybody saw this kid that they could utilize him. Everybody, wide receiver, the defensive coordinator saw what they could do with him. The DB's coach, and then you go on and he goes to Coach Yak in the running back room. And then they obviously see what you could utilize him as a running back, and also what he's done in high school. Just holds really well with what it is. He's actually moved up in his composite score over the last, I think it was last month is when they officially moved him up. But that's what I want most Florida State fans to pay attention to, the actual composite score, and not worry so much about what the ranking is, because Florida State's not going to take 30 kids this class. They're not going to take 20. I'm got them somewhere in between 20 to 23, 24, somewhere around there. And I think everybody's freaking out because we might not be in the top 5 because we're not taking as many as some. But I'm really, really expecting this weekend to be big for Florida State as far as recruiting goes. And it very well could be the biggest weekend for Florida State in recruiting as far as how many of them do it. But I will say that there's going to be a really big surprise either at the end of this month or somewhere in this process of recruiting, because there's a few gentlemen that are really starting to catch on to Florida State. But if you move on to Jonathan Daniels, I don't know what else you can say. Like, there are a lot of fans that ask me, why does one site have him as a 3-star, another site have him as a 5-star? The only thing that I can really say about that is one's doing their job and the other one's not, when it comes in particular to this kid, because there's no doubt that he's at minimum a high 4-star, and that's at bare minimum. So anybody that's got him less than that, they just aren't doing their due diligence on what he is. And I'm not quite sure how they operate, so I don't know why it's so different. But if you look at what the young man brings to the table, it's the perfect length, it's the perfect size right off the bat. He could be very, very well used after a couple months here at Florida State once he does come, because Coach Storms will get hit that weight right where it needs to be, up. And to me, I think he's actually heavier than that 280 that they've got up there.
And that's obviously the site that's not doing its job right there.
I think have you seen how UF fan base has turned on 3, Chris?
I think Chris has left us.
Oh, okay.
I think he is frozen.
Yeah.
But yes, Jonathan Daniels there, and the composite is a healthy 4-star, and that's weighted down obviously by the 3-star status on 247 Sports.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of these guys that their rankings come based upon if they can verify certain characteristics. Like, is he as big, is he as tall as what they think? Maybe what they value as offensive line. When I'm looking at O-line, and actually it was a great discussion that somebody had about watching highlight films. I need to see, are you a road grader? How do you look? Because very, very few times, if I have an elite defensive end in high school and I know that this is an elite offensive lineman, I'm not lining my elite defensive end up against them. Not because I think my kid isn't any good. It's that the purpose is to exploit mismatches. So I want to get to the quarterback. I want to make my path as easy as possible. They can figure that stuff out in college. So these guys don't really necessarily see that. And in camps, I mean, we can talk it, but at the end of the day, like, these guys aren't in full pads. They're in shorts and T-shirts. So it really all comes down to who's the more aggressive player. And that's not always the best athlete in those situations. But I think if you see multiple sites, like if one site has a 5-star, one has a 4-star, one is a 3-star, I think that just means we all know he's a good player, but we're just not. The consensus is everybody isn't sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you see how big of a jump it is even on this page here. You go from an 89 from 247 to his same 247 composite score jumps all the way up to a 94.6. That's a huge difference. In
which, not to cut you off, Chris, if you do any kind of rough math here, means that 89, it's only one of 4 services, weights him down. The other 3 are probably in the 96 to 97 range.
I didn't even hear, they've got him ranked as nationally the 104th best player overall, 5th inside offensive lineman, and 12th player in Florida. So when Florida State lands him, they'll be landing the top 150 guy. I think after they're done doing their due diligence on Mr. Daniels, that he'll actually be a top 100 kid. And that it is what it is. Like our blue chip ratio, which is what everybody is concentrating on right now. Like last year, guys, I think we were somewhere in the 40% range. 40% of them were blue chip players, and we won 10 ball games. So either the development process at Florida State is extremely better than what we anticipated, or they weren't ranked properly coming out of high school. Either way you look at it is what it is. But Jonathan Daniels, I think he commits this month on around the 15th there, 14th, somewhere around there. It could be later than that, but that's when I think it is. And we'll see. I think he comes to Florida State. I think that Coach Atkins has done everything that you possibly could in this recruiting process. And Atkins usually doesn't lose out on the guys that he wants, and he really wants Jonathan Daniels. And if you move on to 3-star, most people have him as a 3-star, and Kevin Levy, which is an athlete. He was a little bit later in the process, Florida State getting after him. And in reality, we didn't make it known that we were really after him. They were actually after him quite early in the process. There just wasn't a lot of talk as far as us and media goes about us going after him, because that was in the process of when you had like the Charles Lester, the JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith was popping up a lot. And that's what's weird. You see on one page they got him as a wide receiver. You look on another page, they got him as an athlete. And he entered as a wide receiver. That's what he entered as. So 247 does have it correct. But what I would say the high side is for him, he is 6 foot. I think the 170 is pretty accurate. But this kid's ability to go up and get the ball, to be 6 foot, he can really jump. He's got a lot of air under him. He knows how to get up. He's also, what James would say, he has a pretty damn good running posture. Like he knows what he's doing as far as running. His speed's a little bit more of he's the quick guy, not necessarily that his top speed's crazy, but his breaks out of route is pretty nice. I don't know if we keep him on the wide receiver side though. I honestly think Pat Surtain could pull him over and put him in a cornerback situation, but we'll see. We'll see what Florida State does with him. I really like the kid myself. I think now a lot of people are now after him when they weren't on he wasn't on their radar, and Florida State's had him on their radar for quite some time. And this is one that Florida State, I think, needs to be careful with. And what I mean by that is only because we were on him early, only because we have a great relationship with him. Everybody that's been pushing for him over the past couple of months before the dead period hit, I think a lot of people really did a good job at recruiting him and getting him to actually have a decision to make. So I think Florida State has to continue to recruit him very hard because people have really started putting interest in him. So I still think he ends up at Florida State as far as verbally committing. What I'm more or less worried about is, will we get him to sign in December? Because I think a lot of people are going to be pushing for him. I also think that we're going to pull in a couple more guys that might threaten the situation a little bit, but we'll have to see what happens. But as of right now, I've got him coming to Florida State for sure. And then the next gentleman is Charles Lester, July 28th. Everybody's marking it. Everybody's ready for July 28th. I'm personally ready for it because I'm ready for Colorado fans to stop talking. I'm ready for that all to go away. we've talked about Charles Lester so much that I'm running out of things to say about him without being completely repetitive. But it's not – this is the great part of this. It's not just that he's a 5-star. It's not just that he's one of the most talented corners in the country. It's not that he's just a genius on the football field. His leadership ability is also extremely amazing. He's very vocal. He's also very proper as far as how, when I say proper, I mean as his play goes, and also sharing with his teammates on where we're supposed to be lined up, what it is that we're doing. He keeps everybody in line, keeps them on track. And I really like that because it reminds me of Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey was always pointing out, no, take 2 steps over. You're supposed to be on this hash. You're supposed to be there. And that's what you need, is that coordinator on the field to make sure people are dead in place, because what they see is they know this kid's going to come here and this is where his route's going to break, either inside or outside. Is he going for a dig route? Is he going out for a post? What's happening? And you need to be here because this is where he's lined up. And I really like Charles Lester in every aspect of what football means. I think a lot of people are questioning the way that he's putting out things in recruiting. Like, they don't like that he's dropping a picture in Alabama. They don't like that he's dropping a picture in Colorado, Florida State. Here's what I will say. At the time that I checked this, he dropped a picture in each one of those uniforms, all around about the same time frame. And there was about 175,000 views in the Alabama one. There was about 105,000 in the Colorado one. But the picture that he took in the Florida State uniform, he was over 375,000 views. So fans from Florida State side are definitely supporting him, definitely following him, because I think as smart as he is on the field, he's going to be one of the smartest NIL business kids that we're going to get in this class, because he really knows how to work the followers, the viewership, the getting people to talk about him. I don't know if anyone else's name for Florida State recruiting wise, I don't know if any other name's been said more than Charles Lester. I really don't. I think he's probably the hype of the class. He's the most talked about, the most everyone's concerned. Where is he going? I think I was concerned at first with Pat Surtain and him because of the situation where we put Coach Woodson, and as far as he left, we brought in Pat Surtain. I didn't know where that was going to go. And then it was crazy because they hit it off. Like, Pat Surtain and Charles Lester, it was like they have known each other for 10 years. And that was really great to see, because coming in as a brand new DB's coach, and you're trying to go after Wells, not, just the biggest bass in the pond. You're going after one of the biggest wells in the ocean. And for him to be able to click like that and just start recruiting right off the bat, I give huge kudos to Coach Surtain, and also for Charles Lester being so open-minded to what Florida State was putting together in the coaching staff. I don't know what I can say negatively that I would like to see worked on for Charles Lester. I'm not going to say that someone's perfect, because that's far from the truth. But this young man might be one of the most ready players that I have seen in a decade. Like, I literally think the kid could step on the field for Florida State tomorrow and hang with the best of them. And that's how I see his abilities. And I think his athleticism speaks for itself.
He's definitely got the confidence that matches a Florida State DB. So,
talking FSU football with all of you each and every Wednesday, 6 Eastern, right here at the Voice of College Football, Florida State. We are so happy to be joined by Chris Frazier, of course, Spearatics. It's a Thursday night show coming up, right, Chris? 7:30 Eastern?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Join Chris on Spearatics, 7:30 Eastern. James going to be there as well?
Yep.
He's showing up for this one. We got Chris and we got James. That's a Thursday night show. You guys need to be there, 7:30 Eastern, Spearatics. Of course, James and Den Media Group. James, what's going on there?
Not much, just right now trying to get things solidified for the fall. We'll have, I think we'll do Big Games BS 4 days a week. We'll have our Jag show. We'll have Sports Den. So we'll have about 4 or 5 different shows that should be on the channel. That we'll have to organize it a little bit more, but it'll be definitely the folders that you can go check out, along with pre and post game Jaguar breakdowns as well for the NFL. So we'll also probably do some, and then we'll have some good community things that we'll have going on within the channel as far as fantasy football, college football, pick'em, tons of opportunities to win stuff. But the biggest thing right now coming up for the channel is once we get to 3,000 followers, we will give away $300 to anybody who's watching Big Games BS live. Along with that, I will put up 2 tickets to the FSU LSU game in Orlando, not tailgate tickets, actual in the stadium tickets. I believe it's plaza level P47 row Q seats 23 and 24 are the exact seats that will be given away. Outside of that, book bag drive, I'm still doing that. I think we've got to 2,500. We got 2,500 book bags left to get. Shout out to Cogent Bank, my buddy Blake, who's an attorney. A couple other guys have come in big with some donations, hoping to be able to make a couple big announcements here coming soon about it. And that's then we have a tailgate for Orlando LSU. But if you don't know about the tailgate, if you can't get into the game, the best thing you can do is get into the tailgate. We actually have an indoor venue now, so a lot of those are the things. Can't wait for some of this stuff to kind of cross off so I can get to the next thing, but it's always something.
If there's no Chris, if there's no James, there's no show here on Wednesday. So we appreciate Chris. We appreciate James. We will drop their links to their channels in the chat, so it's easy on you. Everybody's lazy. They don't want to go search for anything. We drop the link right in the chat. We do this 2 or 3 times every week. So the links are going to be right there. Want you to check out what they've got going as they take an even deeper dive on Florida State football on their respective channels. So get on over there. James and I were going through a few players that showed up in some articles this week related to Pro Football Focus rankings. I found another one in the running back Trey Benson, who's rated the highest graded running back at Pro Football Focus for the class of 24, the NFL draft class. So I wanted to throw these 3 players out. We'll go one at a time and just get both of your impressions of what this season looks like, what they obviously do well, or they wouldn't be talked about, but maybe something that they could improve on and what they bring to this team and why they're important. So let's stay right there with Trey Benson, James, in regards to your thoughts about his level of play.
I think, he's a very hard-nosed running back. He reminds me of because this guy hasn't panned out in the NFL like everybody thought he would. But he's actually hasn't been bad. He's had 2 1,000-yard seasons in the Super Bowl ring. But I say he's a poor man's Leonard Fournette. I think, just don't pick him in the top 10 or top 5 and you're going to be fine. But the way he runs is he's very much so a hammer type of runner with breakaway speed. That's why I say he's like that. I mean, if you go back and you look at the 99-yard kickoff return he had against Boston College, I believe to open the game up. Again, he is a game changer. One of the things that I'm hoping that he takes advantage of and takes the next step is in his vision. That's why I call him like Leonard Fournette. One of our jokes here in Jacksonville when he was here, we called him wrong hole Lenny. Like he's going to just ram it up in there wherever it's at. And it's either going to be a hole or he's going to create one. And that doesn't bode well for long in the NFL. But I also believe FSU's offensive line should take a step in a better direction to where if you're getting half a yard more push in this kind of offense that they run, that's going to create more of an open hole to where he doesn't have to be as good with reading. But he's going to have a lot more on him, whereas Trayshawn Ward can kind of go in and be a change of pace. We don't know who that change of pace back is going to be, and he's going to get another 5 carries a game just with that guy being eliminated, which is why I loved the combo that Trayshawn and Trey Benson had. But I also think Trey Benson definitely. I don't know if will be the best running back in the draft next year, but I definitely can see him being a second day pick and making somebody really, really happy as a running back in the NFL.
Yeah, my biggest thing with Trey Benson is that he has the knowledge, and Atkins has also pointed it out to him. And at the end of the season last year, Atkins and him sat down and watched the film and said that he left a minimum of 400 yards on the field that he could have had. And the part of that is exactly what James is speaking on. Well, the one thing you want him to work on, James says vision, and that I 100% agree with. We need him to be a little bit more of a patient runner. Let his blockers get out in front of him and create those holes. Excuse me, instead of just blasting through wherever he tries to blast through at. Now, he's successful a lot of times because he's a big back and he's tough, but if he had a little bit more patience, he would get more yards, and that's what they focused on this offseason. I know that Coach Atkins was saying that he was highly impressed with how much better he was doing after a lot of the training that he's been going through. And I will say this, the young man that came from Penn State, Keziah Holmes, is going to be a big reason why we see a difference in Trey Benson this year. They said that Keziah has showed Trey a lot of different things as far as patience goes. And Trey will turn around and tell you that Keziah is a better running back than himself. And to me, that's wild because in competitive nature, you usually don't say that someone else is better than you, especially in the same position. And I know that honesty is honesty, but let's just be honest. We all will say we're the best at something until proven otherwise. But he'll tell you straight up that Keziah Holmes is a perfect mixture of himself and the gentleman that went on to Kansas State and Ward. So I'm ready for both of the young men. I'm ready to see if Trey has indeed worked on those situations and figured out what it is that he wasn't doing right. And hopefully we see more patience and that vision really works. And I personally think it will, because one thing that I will say, if a young man can come back from the injury that Trey came back from, if you've got enough discipline and you've got enough willpower to go through that, then you definitely have enough discipline and willpower to correct and critique your game.
Awesome stuff. We've got Chris's link there in the chat. You see it on the screen. Also, James at Den Media Group. Get on over there and check out what they do with Florida State football. All right. Next up, Chris, we'll hit you with Tatum Bethune. What was the ranking there? It was a ranking James least amount of yards before contact, correct? The PFF was rating Tatum Bethune.
Yeah, before they got down, basically tackles with the least amount of yardage. Tatum Bethune was number one, I think, with an average of was it 3.3? I gotta try to find this. David held
stopping guys in their tracks,
basically,
not letting people drag them down the field. So Tatum Bethune, sure tackler. Chris, we'll start with you in regards to what he means to the Florida State defense this year.
You know, the best possible thing for Florida State when it comes to Bethune is that's his grade at the 3.3 yards given up, which is very it's impressive. It's actually really impressive to me because he wasn't healthy for most of last year. So if Florida State gets a healthy Tatum, then man, I'm going to say this: the only thing that I want Tatum to work on, so to speak, and hope that he did during the offseason is his coverage ability a little bit. And that's really hard for me to say because I think he did a decent job. But if I were to nitpick one thing, I want him to cover better in space. But all I want from him is that just loud, obnoxious. I need him to be a little bit more like Verse. I want him to be that vocal piece for that room. And I think he can be. I think he was a little bit last year, but yeah, his injuries last year really had taken a toll, but that young man would not give up. I mean, for the longest, we didn't know he was hurt. I never knew that he was injured, and he played through a lot of injuries last year that surprising to me, and even Randy Shanahan made the statement that he was a tough SOB because most kids can't play through the particular injury that he had at the time, and he didn't even tell him until the game was over that he had been going through it since practice. So I'm really impressed with what he brings to the table. And again, another one that is very disciplined and can definitely critique his game. And I think he will. And he means a hell of a lot to what the defense does at Florida State.
Yeah, I found the tweets. Some of these actually make sense. I would have never just let people. I'm not one of them. I'm a nerd in actually watching film. I'm not a stat nerd because I tell people, I just remember when they gave us our scouting reports in the NFL and in college, and I'm not even gonna pretend to know. They break down film way better in high school than they did when I was in high school. But like returning linebackers with 400 plus snaps and a 90% tackle rate. I'm not even going to pretend to really break down what that is, but I know Tatum Bethune is in the top 5. He's in there. So, but that sounds like something that's real good. But the tackles, this is really the tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. Tatum Bethune is right up there at 18. DeLoach, Bethune was at 3.3 yards or fewer before tackle. And Kalen DeLoach was the second best in the ACC at 3.4. So they're both right there. Great combo there. Like Chris was saying, especially in coverage, that's probably Tatum's weakness. But when you really take a step back and think about it, we needed Tatum to be more of the striker. The guy who's better in coverage is Kalen DeLoach, and that's the guy that we want in coverage or spying athletic quarterbacks. If you go back and I was talking to a scout at the combine about nephew, because I'm close to DeLoach, so you'll never hear me say anything bad about nephew. But the guy was saying they could just draft him off of the Louisville game alone, and just how he spies guys, and then even when he's with the ability to lay a big hit, he is definitely not a chump for contact. In his frame, he's long, he's athletic, he's fast. Only a couple times that I believe those were when people were breaking it down with coverage situations, where there was miscommunication between the linebacker and the safety who had the running back out of the backfield. If you go back, watch Wake Forest, I think late in the second half, they scored on us on a wheel route. Basically, nobody had that guy covered. It's a very bad way to play defense. The joke, you might want to cover that guy. But I think where it got weird, and even if you go back and you watch the Oklahoma game, if you go back and you watch the Florida game as well, but a lot of this could also be discussed about not having Fabian Lovett. And there's some stats that are going around about Florida State when Fabian Lovett was in the game and when Fabian Lovett wasn't in the game. And he was hurt as well. The ability of the guys to get onto the linebackers, when you had to take Bethune out, Lundy wasn't there yet. But he got better as the season went on. But Lundy's got to take that next step. Omar Graham Jr.'s got to take that next step. And then the guy who I want to see what this kid Nicholson is going to be able to provide them. If they're able to get that, I think Florida State fans don't need to cry about linebacker recruiting as much, as long as you're able to get your one blue chip linebacker and you're able to get your project guy. You're going to be more than fine.
All right, Chris, Kalen DeLoach.
Okay, so Kalen might be – I got to be careful with what I say. Kalen might be my favorite defensive player for Florida State. Reason being is because he's just nonstop heart, man. The kid has got it's like tell him he can't do something. Tell him that he's not good enough at something. Tell him that he's not a top ranked or one of the best linebackers in college football. And it's like he's going to do anything and everything to prove you wrong, and yet at the same time look effortless. I think that he might be one of the most talented linebackers that people are overlooking. I think he's being overlooked a lot by not just our fans, but as football fans across the country. I think they overlook him because they're used to linebackers doing X, Y, and Z, and that's just not what we're doing now. It is a different scheme. It's a different type of play, and I probably get more excited when DeLoach is on the field than anyone, just because at any given moment it could be a huge play. I mean, he started really figuring out how to get interceptions. He was also figuring out how to strip sack, and he started pulling it off really nice. About the 7th, 8th game of the season, he really figured out what his role was in this defense, and he's done it even more so in this offseason. There's one thing that I would say he needs to work on. The only thing that I could say he could work on is continue to not listen to anyone out here talking about you. If they're saying you're something different than what you actually are, which he already does a really good job at that. But we all know they all read what's going on in social media, and he does not need to pay attention to anyone other than himself, his trainers, and his coaches, because I think he might be the most improved defensive player that Florida State has this year, and he was already really, really good. But I think that he's going to take control of the defense this year, especially at the linebacker position, and I think he's going to show out because he wants to be in the league.
Kareem, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the contribution. He's setting the bar high here. Will we ever get a safety like Derwin James?
I mean, one, no. But I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think
I'm kind of reading into the question being the safety position hasn't been what it needs to be.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm about to say,
get back to that kind of standard kind of thing.
Derwin James 6'3", 235 or something like that. That's a linebacker. They're not like that can run. That's not stiff. I think what you have to look at is the way the game is going and the way the NFL is going. But mainly the way the college game is going. You've got to have length. And you've got to have your 6'2". I'll give you a guy who's not going to be like Derwin James, but I'll give you a guy who Florida State is really trying to recruit. And I hate saying this because I don't want to seem like I'm too much of a homer, but Chris, you've heard me talk about this kid. Drake Stubbs. The kid is amazing. But he's a 6'3", 6'4", gonna be 200-pound kid that can run, cover ground, great hips. Reminds me, but that's about all you can do is you can try to recruit it, but he's not on our roster right now. And that's no offense. I think we have good safeties. The young man who's a 3-star coming out of Rains High School, that name escapes me right now. I think he's going to be good. And I think the guy we got to flip from Penn State, but I think to expect anything out of them this year would be unfortunate. Shaheem Brown will be in the NFL when it's all said and done. But Derwin, unfortunately, we didn't get what you want to get out of generational talent out of him because he was on some bad teams. But Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey, it's the reason why you know their names. Peter Ward, it's the reason why you know their names. Like, they're once in a generation type guys. If you were able to get generational talent after generational talent, even Alabama doesn't do that. But I mean, yeah, I think that's a tough ask right now, though.
All right, folks, appreciate you being here. And again, we've dropped the links in the chat, and we'll do it again. So you can follow James at Den Media Group and also Chris at Spearatics. They get together Thursday night. Everybody listen, Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern time on Spearatics, 7:30 Eastern. More Florida State talk. coming up on Thursday night. Meanwhile, I'll dig into the Big 12 media days at 8:15 over on the main channel, and we'll be doing Big 12 for the next few days. All right. We had, I've probably lost track of them. LFG, we appreciate you being here, and you're always encouraging people to like the videos. Here we go. Well, it goes right along with the Kareem super chat here. Did Mike Norvell upgrade the safety position for 2023? And do the FSU experts know anything yet about the Noles' new field goal kicker? I know James is a kicking expert, studies it every day.
Kickers aren't people. They just practice. They do their little thing up there, and we just need them when we need them when it matters most.
I've been on a college football field, a fraction of the time that you have, but I used to go to practice fairly regularly at places like Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. And, the kickers always like 3 fields away, looking like they're just having a good old time, spinning the ball up in the air a little bit. Every so often they feel like kicking a few and just having a good old time down there.
Never practice with us. That's what makes them so frustrating. You only need them when you need them, and they don't go through all of the grind and the rigmarole that you have to go through. And but then again, you have to feel sorry for them because nobody else has a situation where all eyes are literally on them and just them at that moment. But I think Mike showed that he'll ride with you. He lost games because of a kicker, and he's stuck with them. I mean, I think if he made one kick that mattered against NC State, you're talking about Florida State being 11 and was it? Excuse me.
Sure.
Yeah, we were 10. Yeah, we're 11-2 as opposed to 10-3. But I know we have the kid for 2024 that everybody's going to be excited about, but I think, but I guess to answer the question, not much. Kickers sound good until they get into pressure situations and they make them. But it's a weird situation. We saw Aguayo be perfect, and then he missed one kick in a pressure situation when Florida State played Oregon. Right before, if anybody remembers, go back and look at it. Right before half, he booted the hell out of that ball, and it just hit the upright. Like it could have. If it would have hit it a different way, it would have bounced in. But after that miss, go back and look at what happened to him. The rest of his career there, it was just like, holy crap. As my great granddad, he went from sugar to shit in a matter of moments. But as far as the safety position goes, they did as best as they can do. We got to see how they go. But what they did is they upgraded 9 other positions on that defense. If it gets to but we're not the only school in the nation that doesn't have the world's greatest safety. If you want to beat Georgia, you know how to beat Georgia, get to their safeties. You want to beat Alabama, you know how to beat Alabama, get to their safeties. Now, the key is get into their safeties. You got to go through a hellacious front 7 to get to all of those guys, to get to what's the weakest part of their defense. So I'll say I'm going to pray that our the 9 guys in front of them do well enough to where we don't know enough.
Yeah, I'll touch a little bit on. I think we're going to be perfectly fine at safety this year. I think Shaheem Brown's going to do just fine. I also think steps behind that are going to be just fine. We're not going to be in a terrible situation. Do we have a Derwin James? No, nobody in the country has a Derwin James right now. And that's fully not opinionated. That's factual. I don't think anyone has a safety of what Derwin James brought to the table for the Noles back then. But we're doing a much better job at recruiting the safety position. I can say that. What's coming will be very successful. But when y'all say kicker, and I'm assuming you're talking about the kicker that we signed in the 23 class that will be on the field with Fitz. But the new kicker that we've got signed for the 24 class, he was doing a camp with his high school, if I'm not mistaken, and he's kicking field goals from 60 yards out. And I'm going to be honest with you, it ain't just by a little bit. I think the kid can move back 10 more, 15 more yards, and that's a lot. But he is lining up at 60, and I mean right down the center, plenty of distance to go. And it's very impressive because he's also being able to do it from each hash on each side of the field. And he that's his drill. He moves up from 60. And instead of what you would think you work your way back, he actually starts from the farthest out and continues to move up in 5-yard increments, sometimes 3. But he's a very impressive young man that's coming in. And Jake Weinberg, he is very impressive. I'm extremely excited for what our kicking game is going to be. Also, people need to realize the kicks that were missed last year under Fitz is when they tried to switch him to a NFL stance and scheme or step pattern in the 2-step instead of 3. He actually has always done the 3-step drop to kick, and they tried to move it to 2 because they were a little bit worried that he was going to be able to get blocked because he was taking that extra step. And actually, he actually gets the ball off on the 3-step. I think it was 0.4 of a second quicker if you just let him do the 3rd step. And I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to critique him to get down to the 2-step for the NFL and stuff like that, but it's just not necessary. He gets it off in plenty of time with his 3 steps. There was really, I think we played with something we didn't have to. I think we were trying to critique something we shouldn't have. But Fitz isn't a bad kicker. Like I think people got upset because he missed a few that were, yes, necessary last year, but just look at the way he finished the year. And everybody always talks about how you start, and we don't really want to pay attention to how you finish. And I think that Fitz finished fine last year. I don't think we have anything to worry about at kicking.
James, you're amazing. You deliver all the time, but I knew Chris was going to pick you up on the place kicking there.
Yeah, I'm like 2 things I don't want to ever leave a game up to: kickers and referees. But they're also parts of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It is called football, and yeah, they're not football players, but man, we could sit here and make a list 100 items long of games, big games that have been decided by kickers, and we're probably on the right or the wrong channel depending on your perspective to even go there. And we probably have a different national champion last season if we have a made kick. So it becomes important unless you're winning these games by 50-0. But at some point in the season, it's going to matter most of the time. Kareem coming back. Kareem, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for this. What's a successful season for Florida State this coming year? Robert Aguayo, in my opinion, was the last great kicker at Florida State. What is success?
This is going to sound contrary to what a lot of things that I said, because I'm speaking very confident on this season. I do believe Florida State has everything it takes to be a playoff contender. I believe they have everything it takes to win the ACC, but I also know games have to be played. If Florida State doesn't win, if Florida's successful season is 10 wins, and I was on USC up, not US, SC Upstate, CBS Upstate in the Carolinas, and I was talking about what Bobby used to have for us. So we used to have a chart, and you could walk in. I think they have something similar like that in the locker room, but it's basically what your goals for the season are. So obviously your first goal is you want to be, if you check these boxes on the way up, you're more than likely get the ones at the top. But these are the ones that you at least want to minimally get. So obviously win 6 games. You got to win 6 games. You got to be bowl. That's how you bowl eligible. Win 8 games. Beat your rivals. Win conference. Or playing conference championship. Win conference. Make the playoffs. Win a national championship. Everything that they're doing is with the top goal to play in the national championship. But if Florida State wins 10 games, when you consider what Florida State's been in the last 7 years, like that's a step. And now that should be the standard, the minimum is to win 10 games to be in championship discussions. The way I used to cover the Jaguars is I would say it like this. Stop worrying about, like, the goal is to have meaningful games in November. Meaning, I don't want to talk about the draft before Thanksgiving. Like, if I could just play, that means we're good. After you play meaningful games in November, if we're playing meaningful games in December, that means we haven't stopped talking about the playoffs yet. We have a chance. And then you move on from there. So if we're talking about FSU potentially to start the month of November off, talking about the outside of when playing the ACC championship, make college football playoff, that's how you win 10 games. And that means you're on the right path. And that's helping recruiting, and that's helping build a foundation for you to win forever.
Yeah, a successful season for Florida State is 10 wins in the regular season. That would be 10 wins without a bowl win. So, yes, the regular season, losing 10 regular season wins is definitely a successful season for Florida State. That would still be an improvement based off of what you did last year. Yeah, you ended up with 10 wins, but it took a bowl game to get the 10th. So if you get 10 wins in the regular season, you've definitely progressed in this season. But I'll put it this way. I wish this year was the year they implemented the 12-team playoff. Because at worst case scenario, I see Florida State being that 10-2. I think that, I don't want to say worst case scenario because if something happens to Jordan or whatever, things could go wrong. But what I mean is Florida State's expectations are definitely the 10 wins for sure. Me and James both have Florida State going 11-1 in the regular season right now. And everybody's like, well, how can your ceiling and floor be so close? Because the expectations are almost perfection. So when your expectations are almost perfection, then your floor, because of what you have caliber-wise on the team, you shouldn't lose more than this based off of strength of schedule. And based off of our strength of schedule, our two most doomed possible games are in the first month of the season, which therefore with LSU in the first game of the season, Clemson in the fourth game of the season. The only issue that you have is that you're playing Clemson at Clemson. If we were not playing in Clemson, I wouldn't even be as worried about that game. But it's extremely hard to go into Clemson, South Carolina, and beat them. I don't know. It was 30 some odd games in a row that they had not lost at home. They do play extremely well at home. They're a very good team, but the biggest question that's been around Florida State this entire offseason is LSU going to be that much better than us? Is LSU going to make us look ridiculous? And I don't see it. I don't see it anywhere. I think Florida State, honestly, has a better chance at beating LSU than Clemson this year. And the reason that I say that is because they're coming to Orlando, Florida. It's the first game of the season. Florida State has guys that have been playing together for 3, 4, some of them 5 years. Yeah, because we got 2 or 3 guys that have been there. This will be their 5th because of COVID year. These guys have been playing together for a while. They've been on the same coaching staff. There's now consistency on the staff. Everybody knows the playbook. Everybody knows their role in this game. And LSU, while being a very talented roster and having a really good head coach in Brian Kelly for sure, but those guys haven't played together as long as the Florida State guys. But, they added X amount of players from the portal. So did Florida State. Like, they went back and forth, hand in hand. It was almost like we were in a competition as far as what we were getting out of the portal. You'd hear LSU lands this guy, well, Florida State lands this guy. Florida State lands this guy, well, LSU landed this one. And it went back and forth. But me personally, I don't think LSU has enough depth in the corner and safety area to be able to keep up with Florida State based on the size that we have at wide receiver. So that's the reason why I give us better odds of beating LSU than Clemson, just based on Dabo knows how to beat us, and we're going to their house, and they got 3 games to get ready for us before we play them. LSU don't have that luxury of 3 games getting ready for us, and we don't have the luxury for 3 games getting ready for them either. But I think Florida State can say that they're the more experienced team going into that game. That's why I give them the edge to beat LSU in the very first game of the season. And yes, everyone's worried about LSU's D-line. It's technically the same D-line that we played last year. Perkins did play in the game. I don't know why people say that he didn't. Did he play every snap or a lot of snaps? No, but he did play in the game. The most impressive stat to me in that game is that Florida State did not allow 1 sack in the entire game. None. Jordan was never sacked the entire game. And that's, to me, very impressive with what defensive line and linebackers that LSU acquires. I think that's amazing. I think people are going to be very surprised at what Florida State does to beat LSU. I personally think it'll be the talk of the week if it goes the way it's supposed to.
All right, folks, we do this every Wednesday, 6 o'clock Eastern time. So get here on time. And for most of you who have joined us late, you stick around right here. You can watch what you missed instantly. The video posts automatically Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern. Chris, James, Spearatics right here. The link's in the chat. It's easy to find. Otherwise, Spearatics right here on YouTube, 7:30 Eastern on Thursday. Otherwise, Den Media Group's a destination as well, of course. Guys, thanks so much for making this work each and every Wednesday.
Appreciate you having me.
We got Miami coming up. And for those of you boycotting Miami, I get it. We take your calls at 8:15. Then after that on Big 12 Media Days and anything you want to talk about concerning college football on the main channel, 8:15 Eastern. See you then.
Go Noles.